Welcome back to the Magnolia Media Network. I'm your host, Jonathan M. Ruggiero. Today, we start things off with something we simply can't avoid anymore. Campus protests on behalf of Palestinians in Gaza. Although not sure that the campus protesters quite understand that these protests really aren't in favor of Palestinians, they're in favor of Hamas. Hamas has been the singular instrument in the 34,000 dead, the 34,000 people who have died as a result of what they did on October 7th and the fact they've used Palestinians as human shields. Now, I'm a liberal, and yes, you're hearing a liberal say protests have to stop. I typically would never side with the Los Angeles Police Department on anything, but they had a right and a duty to break up that protest that occurred last night. It's just that simple. Disagree with me if you like. Put them in the comments down below, and I'll react to them. I'll respond, perhaps on air, to what you have to say about what's going on in Los Angeles, in New York City, and at campuses across the country. Now, I'm not saying they should take the heavy-handed approach that the Georgia State Police took at Emory University when they violently broke that protest up hours after it began. But we have to remember, when Jewish students are being berated with concepts and ideas like from the river to the sea, that is calling for genocide. Let's just call it what it is. We'll call a spade here at the Magnolia Media Network, no matter whose political affiliation they might represent. And while, yeah, it might cost President Biden a few votes here and there, bear with me a moment and put a pin in that. Because under a Trump presidency, we have now learned, thanks to the new Time magazine article, and why in the world he would carry on for an hour on 2 occasions, if I'm not mistaken, with a Time magazine reporter explaining what a Donald Trump Part 2 presidency would look like when the handcuffs are essentially off, when he's unleashed on the American public to do whatever he damn well pleases. It's terrifying. There will be no John Kellys. There will be no H.R. McMasters. None of those people, even Bill Barrs or Mike Pence's around. It will be clones of Stephen Miller and Stephen Miller. That's what we're looking at in a second Trump term. Be afraid, be very afraid, get out and vote for democracy and vote for Joe Biden. Because if you think Joe Biden's policies might be a little callous, perhaps not turning on an ally of the United States for more than 70 years is somehow counterproductive, imagine what will happen to Gaza under a second Trump administration. He's already promising to reinstate the Muslim ban on day one. You don't have to wait for it. It's going to happen. He's promising you that much. Take him at his word. Steer clear of this man. And I don't know what's wrong with the 30% of Americans who would literally follow this man off a cliff. Isn't that how the dodo bird went extinct after all? Well, here we are in 2024. We have a bunch of dodo birds ready to march the United States of America off the authoritarian cliff, with no chance of reciprocity. There will be no reciprocity from the left. That's not how we operate. Yeah, we get out and protest. Yeah, we support each other. But we don't need comments from people like Ilhan Omar saying the things that she said in recent days. It's appalling, whether it comes from the left or from the right. Now, on the right side, you have protesters who are hijacking the legitimate protests, white nationalists and other nefarious sorts, coming up with signs pointing at Jewish students saying, Hamas will get you next. Hamas will get you next? Is that for real? Is this really happening? In the United States of America, at some of our most elite institutions, ranging from Harvard and Columbia to Princeton and Yale, it's rather small at Yale, to UCLA and Berkeley. We expect radical protests from UCLA, from Berkeley. We expect them to be on the right side of history. I agree with the distinguished professor Scott Galloway when he says that one of these days they will stand ashamed of what they did. You can only double down on something awful for so long. And that's what they'll have to do, at least in the short term. Double down on what is ignorance and grievance. I don't know what to say for them other than this: it has to stop. Now, the contempt trial for Donald Trump happened today, Thursday, May 2, 2024. Judge Brashan heard arguments on yet another contempt charge and said that he will rule on it Friday. So let's wait and see what happens. This all as Keith Davidson, Stormy Daniels' attorney and Karen McDougal's attorney, took the stand and gave more incriminating evidence against Donald Trump, essentially pummeling Donald Trump with facts as the prosecution continues to shine. Meanwhile, we have John Sauer, whose voice I really can't stand to listen to his voice. It starts to make my stomach turn. And it's not because of what he's saying. It's because of the actual sound of his voice. There's something wrong with him. I mean, he sounds worse than RFK Jr. That froggish sort of whatever that's going on with John Sauer. I just envision a guy who smokes 4 packs a day. And that's coming from a former smoker. So, the argument doesn't seem to be carrying much water with the Supreme Court, but it's not going to stop them from running interference for the demented one, their God King, Dementia J, Defendant J, Mango Mussolini, treasonous Trump. That's who. They'll do their part. I'm absolutely certain that they will. That they'll do whatever they can to get in the way of the wheels of justice and ensure that he doesn't actually have to face Judge Tanya Chutkan and her courtroom in D.C., at least before the election. Now, we get out and do our part in states like Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, Arizona, Georgia, Nevada. Then there's really not a whole lot to worry about. Donald Trump will eventually face some music, or they'll make Joe Biden a king. And then he can just suspend all of Donald Trump's civil rights and throw him in Guantanamo Bay, where, let's be frank, he belongs. Well, this has been a quick update from the Magnolia Media Network. Again, I'm your host, Jonathan M. Ruggiero. That's spelled Ruggiero. Hit that like, subscribe button. Leave us comments. Turn on your notifications, because at least once a day, I'm going to pop up with one of these videos just for you guys to go along with the Magnolia Media pod that we produce at least a couple of times a week. It's kind of hard to tell when we're going to do them. Scheduling conflicts and things of that nature come up. And believe me, producing a podcast is a lot harder than you think, at least if you want to do a decent job. Having said that, be sure and help us out and keep us on the air as the South's only left of center news outlet. We're bringing you news from sources like CNN, MSNBC, NBC News, CBS, ABC, the Tennessean, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. We're bringing you that news here, bringing it to one spot, the Magnolia Media Network in Knoxville, Tennessee. We're not running off to New York or Los Angeles to produce this thing. We're doing it right here in the eye of the storm. And as I said in yesterday's video, 40 miles to my east, there's a Trump superstore. And soon, 25 miles to my west, there will be yet another Trump superstore. So think about that for a moment. We are not insulated in Los Angeles, DC, New York, or Philadelphia, although we might be making the move to one of those areas sooner rather than later. But for now, I'm Jonathan M. Ruggiero. This is the Magnolia Media Network. Oh, one last note. One last little bit of housekeeping. Check us out at patreon.com. You get exclusive content there. We'll be posting more and more as we see more and more subscribers at patreon.com/Magnolia Media Network. We'll see you next time.